I want to start with a confession. Most people who tell me they're trying to be more stoic are doing it completely wrong. They think stoicism means don't feel anything, don't show weakness, don't care. But that's not stoicism. That's emotional shutdown. As a therapist, I've met hundreds of people, especially men, who've been taught since childhood. Don't cry, don't be soft, don't let anyone see you hurt. So, they grow up believing that emotions are enemies. And when life gets painful, they put on a mask, smiling, pretending they're fine, while inside they're drowning. But Stoicism? Stoicism doesn't ask you to stop feeling. It teaches you how to feel wisely. Imagine this. You're in a storm. Rain, wind, lightning, the whole thing. You can't stop the storm, right? But you can decide whether to stand in it screaming or find shelter, wait, breathe, and choose your next step calmly. That's what Stoicism really is. It's learning to face life's storms without letting them destroy your inner peace. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, lost children, faced betrayal, led armies through plague and war. Epictetus was born a slave and lived decades under brutal masters. Seneca was exiled and ordered to take his own life. And yet, none of them said, "Don't feel." They said, "Feel deeply, but don't let your feelings rule you." Because emotions are like fire. A controlled fire cooks your meal, warms your home. An uncontrolled fire burns everything down. So, the Stoic doesn't put out the fire. He learns how to hold it without getting burned. Let me tell you about a patient I once worked with. We'll call him David. David was a brilliant engineer, quiet and kind, but he carried anger like a hidden volcano. At work, he'd hold it in. At home, he'd explode over small things. When he finally came to therapy, he said, "Doc, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just want to stop feeling angry." And I told him, "That's your first mistake. You don't need to stop feeling angry. You need to understand what your anger is trying to tell you." See, Stoicism and modern psychology actually agree on this. Emotions are information, not instructions. Anger might be saying, "A boundary's been crossed." Fear might be saying, "Something important needs attention." Sadness might be saying, "You've lost something you cared about." The Stoic learns to listen to that message, without letting it take over the steering wheel. I often ask my clients this question. When you're upset, who's driving your car, your emotions, or your reason? Because if emotions are driving, you'll end up in places you never meant to go. But if you can sit in the driver's seat, acknowledge your emotions, feel them, and still keep your hands steady on the wheel, then you're practicing real Stoicism. Seneca, one of the great Stoics, wrote 3 beautiful essays on grief. If Stoicism was truly about not feeling, those essays wouldn't exist. But they do. In them, he doesn't say, "Don't grieve." He says, "Grieve, but don't drown. Let your heart break, but don't let it stay broken forever." That's the difference between suppression and strength. One hides emotion, the other transforms it. I remember another client, Sarah, a single mother raising 2 kids. She once told me, "I keep snapping at my son. Every time he spills milk or forgets his homework, I just lose it, and then I cry all night because I hate myself for yelling." I asked her, "Do you think being calm means never feeling frustrated?" She said, "Isn't that what control means?" I smiled and said, "No, control isn't about not feeling. It's about choosing how you act after you feel." That's Stoicism in one sentence. Let me share a small technique from both Stoic practice and modern CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Next time you feel triggered, angry, anxious, hurt, try saying this silently to yourself. "This is just an emotion, not an emergency." That small sentence gives your brain a gap. A few seconds of space between emotion and reaction. That gap is where freedom lives. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning. You can't control what others say or do, but you can control what happens inside your own mind. That's Stoicism. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of attention. Because life will always give you things to feel. Love, loss, frustration, joy, disappointment. The Stoic doesn't deny them. He welcomes them all, but stays grounded. Like a mountain surrounded by shifting weather. So, if you've ever thought Stoicism means being cold, distant, or unfeeling, I want you to rewrite that belief today. Stoicism isn't about turning your heart into stone. It's about keeping your heart soft, while keeping your mind steady. It's the art of feeling everything, without being ruled by anything. Alright, let's keep going. If part 1 was about emotions, part 2 is about power. Not the kind of power you post on LinkedIn. Not job titles, not resumes, not how big your house is. I'm talking about the kind of power the Stoics cared about most. The power to govern yourself. History gives us a strange, beautiful contrast. On one side, you have Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, ruler of the most powerful empire in the world. He had armies, wealth, palaces, statues, honor. On the other side, you have Epictetus, born a slave, owned by other people, beaten, controlled, powerless on paper. And yet, Marcus Aurelius read Epictetus. He admired him. He considered him a teacher. So let me ask you, what does it say when the most powerful man on earth looks up to a man who owned nothing? It says this: in Stoicism, your real status is not your position in the world. It's your position inside your own mind. I want to ask you something very directly. If you had to rate your ability to master yourself, your impulses, your habits, your reactions, what score would you give yourself from 1 to 10? You might have a good job, a nice car, a house in a good neighborhood here in the US. You might have people who admire you, followers, a nice, about me, section. But let's zoom in a little. Do you eat because you're hungry? Or because you're stressed, bored, lonely? Do you spend money because you need something? Or because you're trying to fill an empty space inside? Do you reach for your phone because you actually have something to do? Or because you can't stand sitting alone with your own thoughts? Do you lose your temper with the people you love most? Even when a part of you is screaming, "Stop, don't say that." If the answer is yes to a lot of those, then according to the Stoics, it doesn't matter how successful you look from the outside. Inside, you're still not truly free. One of my clients, let's call him Mark, had all the classic signs of success. He ran his own company. He made great money. He lived in a beautiful home, drove a luxury car, traveled internationally. From the outside, he looked like he had made it. But in my office, he looked me in the eyes and said, "I feel like a slave to my own life." He wasn't chained like Epictetus, but he was chained to expectations. Expectations from family, from culture, from social media, from that invisible scoreboard in his head that kept saying, "Not enough yet. Do more." He told me, "If a friend buys a bigger house, I feel like I'm failing. If someone younger than me gets promoted, I feel worthless. I don't know what enough looks like anymore." That's one of the saddest forms of poverty. Not material poverty, but poverty of contentment. When more becomes a religion, you can never rest. You're always chasing something slightly out of reach. The Stoics understood this long before Instagram, TikTok, and hustle culture. Marcus Aurelius kept reminding himself, very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. For them, the richest person in the room was not the one who owned the most, but the one who needed the least to feel whole. Let's make this a little more personal. I want you to imagine this. Tomorrow morning, you wake up, and for some strange cosmic reason, all your labels disappear. No job title, no degrees, no salary, no brand name on your clothes, no followers, no external status. Just you, your thoughts, your character, your habits, your way of treating people? Would you feel like someone? Or would you feel like you don't exist? That's a hard question. But it's a very Stoic one. Because Stoicism keeps asking, who are you when there is nothing left to hide behind? In therapy, I sometimes ask clients, outside of all your roles, parent, manager, partner, entrepreneur, what kind of person do you actually want to be? Not what do you want to have. Not what do you want people to think about you. But, do you want to be calm or reactive? Do you want to be honest or manipulative? Do you want to be generous or constantly afraid of losing? Do you want to be grounded or always chasing? Stoicism is ruthless in the best way. It doesn't care about your resume. It cares about your inner posture. There's a concept in modern psychology called the hedonic treadmill. It basically says, you get something you want, a raise, a new car, a bigger house. And at first, you're excited. But very quickly, that new thing becomes normal. Your brain adapts. You feel the same. So you set a new goal. Chase a new high. Tell yourself, once I get that, I'll slow down. I'll finally feel okay. But the finish line keeps moving. You don't realize you're running on a treadmill. You're sweating, exhausted, out of breath. But you're still in the same spot emotionally. Stoicism's answer to that is simple, but not easy. Step off. Not quit life, not quit work. But step off the illusion that your worth is somewhere out there. So how do we start doing that in real life? Not in theory, not in a quote, but on a random Tuesday, when you're tired and scrolling and comparing. Here are a few very Stoic, very psychological questions to ask yourself. Do I actually want this? Or have I been trained to want it? Am I buying this because it truly fits my values and needs? Or because it will impress people for 10 seconds? What does enough look like for me? Not in 20 years. Today. If your basic needs are covered, what else is truly essential to a meaningful life? If I lose this, the job, the money, the status, will I still respect the person I am? If the answer is no, that means your identity is sitting on quicksand. I once worked with a woman, let's call her Anna. She said, I've followed the checklist my whole life. Graduate, get a job, get married, have kids, buy a house. And I did it, all of it. But I still feel like something's missing. Like I'm living someone else's script. That's the moment Stoicism walks into the room and quietly asks, whose life are you living? The one you were handed, or the one you chose? Self-mastery, for the Stoics, isn't just about controlling your temper or resisting that extra drink. It's about reclaiming authorship over your own story. It's the courage to say, I don't want to be ruled by envy, by fear, by status anxiety, or by what strangers think of me. So let me leave you with a small exercise, a very Stoic one, but also very psychological. Tonight, take a notebook or a note app and write down, if I stopped chasing for a moment, what would enough look like in my life? Not your parents' version, not Instagram's version, not your industry's version, your version. Maybe enough for you is time to eat dinner with your family without checking your phone. Work that pays the bills and doesn't crush your soul. A simple home that feels safe and warm. A body that can walk, breathe, and move without pain. 2 or 3 people you can be fully yourself with. If that's what truly matters, then every time you trade peace of mind for more status, more things, more applause, you're not expanding your empire, you're losing it. To a Stoic, the greatest empire is not Rome. It's not Wall Street. It's not Silicon Valley. It's the person who can look in the mirror and say, I may not control the world, but I am learning, day by day, to control myself. And that kind of power? No recession, no layoff, no scandal, no algorithm can ever take away from you. Let's keep going. If part 2 was about who you are on the inside, part 3 is about what you're actually doing with your life, hour by hour. Because here's a hard truth. A lot of people aren't unhappy because their life is objectively terrible. They're unhappy because their life is full of things that don't really matter. And they're exhausted. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man of his time, had a simple question he used as a filter for his life. Is this essential? That's it. 4 words. Not, is this impressive? Not, will people like me more if I do this? Not, will this make me look successful? Just, is this essential? And if the answer was no, he trained himself to let it go. Let's bring that into your world. I want you to picture a regular day in your life. You wake up. You reach for your phone. Notifications, emails, messages. You open one, then another, then another. Somehow, 40 minutes pass. You haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Then work. Meetings that probably could have been an email. Emails that probably didn't need to be answered right away. Tasks you said yes to because you felt guilty saying no. Then, on the way home, social media. Scroll, swipe, scroll. Comparing, judging, reacting, absorbing drama you were never meant to carry. By the time you get home, your body is wiped. Your mind is cluttered. Your heart is tired. And the worst part? You didn't actually touch the things that matter most to you. As a therapist, I hear this sentence all the time. I'm busy all day, but I still feel like I'm not really living. One client of mine, we'll call her Jenna, said exactly that. She was a nurse. Her schedule was packed. Color-coded calendar, back-to-back responsibilities. She told me, I'm drowning, but I can't drop anything. Everything is important. So I asked her, everything? She laughed, a little bitterly. Yeah, it feels that way. Over the next few weeks, we tried a very Stoic experiment. I said, let's borrow Marcus Aurelius for a week. Every time you're about to do something, answer an email, agree to a meeting, open your phone, say yes to a request. Pause for just 5 seconds and ask, is this essential? Does this truly need you? Does it truly need to be done now? Does it truly align with your values and long-term direction? Or is it just noise, guilt, fear, or habit? She came back the next week, half laughing, half horrified. Doc, if I'm honest, like 60 to 70% of what I do every day is not essential. At all. And that's where Stoicism becomes brutally practical. The Stoic isn't anti-work. The Stoic is anti-waste. Think of your life like a glass jar. In this jar, you can put big stones, your health, your family, your closest relationships, your meaningful work, your deep rest, your mental health. Small stones, tasks that matter, but are flexible, chores, logistics, side projects. Sand, mindless scrolling, gossip, petty arguments, reflexive, yes, to everything. Doing things just so people don't get upset. Busy work, that looks important but isn't. If you pour the sand in first, the gossip, the drama, the mindless scrolling, the people-pleasing, the endless pseudo-work, you won't have room for the big stones. You'll end up living a life full of activity and empty of meaning. Marcus's question, is this essential? Is his way of making sure the big stones go in first. Let me ask you something. If someone could secretly record your entire day, from the moment you woke up until the moment you fell asleep, and then played it back for you in fast forward, would you feel proud of how you spent your time? Or would you feel a little sick seeing how much of your life is being traded for things you don't even care about? That's not a judgment. It's an invitation. Because most of us don't consciously choose to waste our time. We just never question it. We respond. We react. We say, yes, automatically. We scroll automatically. We complain automatically. We don't ask, is this essential? We just do it because it's there. From a psychological standpoint, constantly doing non-essential things has a cost. It drains mental energy. It increases stress. It feeds the feeling of being always busy, never fulfilled. It leaves you with no bandwidth for what truly matters. By the time you finally have a quiet moment to work on that thing you say is important, your book, your health, your relationship, your personal growth, you're too tired. So you tell yourself, tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next week. Then next month. Then someday. Stoicism doesn't want your whole life to become a museum of somedays. So what does essential even mean? It doesn't mean urgent. It doesn't mean what others want from you the loudest. It means, does this align with who I want to be? Does this move me, even a little, toward the life I actually care about? Does this care for my health, my character, my relationships, my deeper purpose? If I look back 5 years from now, will this have mattered? If the answer is no, why are you spending so much of your one life on it? I know what you might be thinking. But I can't just drop everything. I have responsibilities. Of course. Stoicism isn't about abandoning your duties. In fact, it deeply respects them. But there's a difference between responsibility and compulsion. Responsibility is, I choose to do this because it's the right thing, even if it's hard. Compulsion is, I do this because I'm afraid of what people will think if I don't. When Marcus asks, is this essential? He's not saying, only do things that feel nice. He's saying, do the things that are truly yours to do. The hard conversation you've been avoiding? That might be essential. The doctor's appointment you keep putting off? Essential. Playing with your kid for 20 minutes with your phone in another room? Essential. Answering that email in 5 minutes instead of 2 seconds? Probably not. Winning that argument in the comments section with a stranger? Definitely not. I had a client once, a business owner, who constantly felt burned out. He told me, I work 12 to 14 hours a day. I can't slow down. So I asked him to track his week. Not in detail, just in blocks. At our next session, we looked at his notes together. Work. Yes, a lot. But also, 2 to 3 hours a day, checking social media. 45 minutes arguing in a group chat about something he didn't really care about. Numerous meetings he hadn't actually needed to be in. Late night, doom scrolling, when he told himself he was too tired to do anything meaningful. When we highlighted all the non-essential stuff, he just sat there, quiet. Then he said, I'm not burnt out because of my work. I'm burnt out because of my noise. That's a very Stoic realization. So how do you start using, is this essential, in your own life? Not as a slogan, but as a real practice? Here's a simple way. Brain micro experiment. 3 essential pauses. For just one day, pick 3 moments to pause and ask yourself, is this essential? For example, before you open social media, your thumb is about to tap the app. Pause. Ask, is this essential, right now? Or am I just bored, anxious, or avoiding something? Before you say yes to a new request, someone asks for your time, energy, or help. Ask, is this essential for my values, my growth, my relationships? Or am I just afraid of saying no? Before you react in anger, you're about to send that sharp text, post that sarcastic comment. Ask, is this essential to the person I want to be? Or am I just trying to win a moment and lose my peace? You don't have to be perfect. Just be honest. Because the goal isn't to live a life with 0 unnecessary moments. The goal is to live a life where your best energy, your best hours, go to what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more peace. In modern terms, he might say, you don't need a productivity app. You need a priority reset. You don't need to stuff more into your day. You need to let the non-essential fall away. So let me leave you with 2 questions to carry after this video. What are the big stones in your life right now? The 3 to 5 things that, if you lost everything else, you'd still want to protect. What is one non-essential thing you're ready to gently do less of this week? Not cut out completely, Just do less. Scroll a little less. Argue a little less. People please a little less. And take that freed up time and energy and feed something essential instead. Because at the end of your life, when you look back, you won't say, I wish I had answered more emails faster. I wish I had scrolled more. I wish I had argued with more strangers online. You'll care about how you loved, how you grew, how you took care of your body and mind, how present you were for the people and moments that mattered. And all of that starts with 4 small words. Is this essential? Let's keep going. By now, you might be thinking, okay, Stoicism sounds deep and poetic, but does it actually help with real mental health stuff? With anxiety, overthinking, feeling out of control? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's surprisingly close to one of the most widely used therapies in modern psychology. CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Let me show you. CBT is built on a simple idea. It's not just what happens to you that hurts. It's the story your mind tells about what happens. Sound familiar? The Stoic Epictetus said almost 2,000 years ago. People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of things. That sentence could be on the first page of a CBT textbook. Let's take a very everyday situation. You text a friend, hey, want to grab coffee tomorrow? You see the seen mark. No reply. 30 minutes. 2 hours. Still nothing. Now pause. What actually happened? Event. You sent a message. Your friend hasn't replied yet. But your brain doesn't stop at the event, does it? It starts writing a script. Did I say something wrong last time? Maybe they're mad at me. Maybe they don't really like hanging out with me. Honestly, I'm probably just annoying. These are not facts. These are automatic thoughts. In CBT, we teach people to catch these thoughts, write them down, question them. In Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius did the exact same thing in his journal. He would constantly remind himself, don't be carried away by first impressions. Step back, examine them. So instead of blindly believing, they're ignoring me because I'm not important, both a CBT therapist and a Stoic would invite you to ask, what are the facts? What else could be true? Am I confusing the event with my interpretation? Maybe your friend is driving. Maybe they're in a meeting. Maybe they're having a rough day. Maybe they opened your message, got distracted, and forgot to answer. Are those possibilities less dramatic? Yes. Are they more realistic than, no one likes me? Also yes. I once worked with a client, let's call him Jason, who had intense social anxiety. After every meeting at work, his mind turned into a courtroom. Why did I say that? They must think I'm stupid. My boss probably regrets hiring me. When we sat together and wrote his thoughts out, it was like reading a Stoic case study. All or nothing thinking. Mind reading. Catastrophizing. We used CBT techniques. Separate facts from stories. Look for evidence for and evidence against the thought. Ask, is there a more balanced way to see this? At the same time, I'd sometimes quote Marcus Aurelius to him. If it's not true, don't say it. If it's not certain, don't assume it. The moment he realized, oh, I'm treating my fears as facts, something softened. He didn't stop having anxious thoughts overnight, but he stopped giving every thought full authority. That's both CBT and Stoicism in action. Another huge overlap between Stoicism and modern mental health is control. CBT asks, what can you actually do in this situation? What is within your control? Stoicism has its most famous exercise built on this. The dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us. Some things are not. You can't control other people's opinions, the past, the future, random events. Whether your boss is in a bad mood today, you can control how you interpret what's happening, the actions you take, the values you choose to live by, the way you speak to yourself, whether you reach out for help or stay silently drowning. When people feel anxious, depressed, or helpless, a big part of the pain comes from this belief. I have no control over anything. I'm just at the mercy of everything. Stoicism doesn't deny your limits. It doesn't say, you can control everything. That would be toxic positivity. Instead, it says, you can't control everything, but you can always control something. Start there. And that something might be really small. I can't fix my whole life today, but I can get out of bed and take a shower. I can't change how they feel, but I can send one honest message. I can't erase the past, but I can decide not to repeat it. From a mental health perspective, those small choices are not small at all. They're how you rebuild a sense of agency, that feeling of, I still have a say in my own story. Let me tell you about another client. We'll call her Lily. She came to therapy after a painful breakup and a rough year at work. Her words were, I feel completely powerless. Life just does whatever it wants with me. We didn't start by arguing with her feelings. They were real. Instead, we started listing, what are 3 things that, even in this storm, you still have some control over? After a long pause, she said, I guess I can control how I spend my evenings. I can control whether I keep stalking my ex online. And I can control whether I tell my friends I'm not okay, instead of faking it. Those weren't dramatic actions. They were simple, human, doable. But each one gently pulled her out of total helplessness. That's Stoicism in a clinical setting. So how exactly does Stoicism support modern mental health? Let's put it simply. It trains you to notice your thoughts, instead of believing every thought. It teaches you to separate facts from stories. It helps you focus on what you can control, instead of drowning in what you can't. It gives you an inner framework to handle stress, rejection, fear, and uncertainty. Does it replace therapy? No. Stoicism is not a substitute for professional help, especially if you're struggling with serious depression, trauma, or other clinical conditions. But it can be a powerful companion to therapy. In fact, if you ever sit with a CBT therapist and then go home and read Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, you'll feel a strange sense of déjà vu. You'll think, wait, I've heard this before. Because you have. Just in a different language. If you want a small, practical way to start using this Stoic CBT combo in your own life, try this. Brain 10-second Stoic check. The next time you feel a heavy emotion, anxiety, anger, shame, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. What actually happened? Just the facts, no adjectives, no assumptions. What story is my mind telling about what happened? They hate me, I always fail, I'm not enough. What part of this is under my control right now? What I do next, how I speak to myself, whether I breathe and wait before reacting. You don't have to fix everything in that moment. You just have to stop letting your automatic thoughts run the show. That tiny act of awareness is profoundly Stoic. And profoundly therapeutic. So if you've ever thought Stoicism is just for philosophers, for ancient men in robes writing on scrolls, remember this. It's also for you. Late at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why your mind is so loud and your heart is so tired. Stoicism doesn't silence your mind, but it teaches you how to talk back to it. Gently, firmly, clearly. It doesn't erase your anxiety, but it gives you tools to stand beside it without collapsing. And in a world that constantly overwhelms our nervous systems, with news, noise, pressure, and comparison, that kind of inner training might be one of the most modern things you can do. Perfect. Let's continue. There's a phrase the Stoics loved, in Latin. It sounds almost musical. Amor fati. It means, love of fate. But it doesn't mean what most people think. It's not saying, just accept everything. Stop caring. It's saying something much braver. Even when life breaks your plans, find a way to love what happens. Now, let's be honest. That's easy to say when life is calm. But what about when you lose your job? When someone you love leaves? When a diagnosis, a betrayal, A sudden loss hits so hard it knocks the air out of you? How are you supposed to love that? Let's not sugarcoat it. You can't love pain while you're bleeding. And Stoicism never asked you to pretend you could. What it asks is this. When the wound stops bleeding, can you stop fighting reality long enough to learn from it? That's the essence of amor fati. One of my clients, let's call her Megan, came to me after what she called the worst year of my life. She'd been laid off unexpectedly after 12 years at her company. The same month, her long-term relationship ended. She told me, "I can't accept any of it. It's not fair. I worked so hard. I was loyal. Why would life do this to me?" And honestly, I didn't try to talk her out of it. Because she was right, life was unfair. Stoicism doesn't deny that. But a few months later, something shifted. She said, "I don't forgive life yet, but I'm tired of hating it." That's the moment amor fati begins. Not when everything feels fine, but when you realize that hating reality is also a form of imprisonment. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who lost children, faced wars, plagues, and betrayal, wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny." For what could more aptly fit your needs? Notice he didn't say, tolerate it. He said accept, even love it. Because in his view, every obstacle, every pain, was raw material to become wiser, braver, kinder. The Stoics saw life like a sculptor sees marble. You can't always choose the stone you're given, but you can choose what to carve out of it. And from a psychological point of view, this isn't just philosophy, it's emotional healing. When you resist reality, your nervous system stays in survival mode. You keep replaying the past, rewriting the story, arguing with what's already happened. But when you practice acceptance, real, grounded acceptance, you start to calm the system. You tell your body, okay, it's done, it happened. Now let's figure out what to do next. That shift, from resistance to acceptance, is where recovery truly begins. I remember a man I once worked with, a father who lost his son in an accident. He told me, "I hate it when people tell me everything happens for a reason. There's no reason good enough for this." And I said, "You're right, you don't have to find a reason. But one day, you might find a response." He paused for a long time, then said quietly, "I think I already know what that means." Years later, he started a scholarship fund for young people in his son's name. He turned grief into guidance. That's amor fati. Not loving tragedy, but transforming it. In my own life, I've seen amor fati in small, ordinary moments too. Like the time my flight got canceled, and I ended up sitting next to a stranger who became a lifelong friend. Or when a project I deeply wanted to succeed failed, and forced me to rethink my work in a way that led to something even more meaningful. Life gives you can either shrink you or shape you. The Stoic chooses shaping. Let me be clear, amor fati isn't passive. It doesn't mean accept injustice and do nothing. It means see things as they are first, then act from peace, not panic. Because when you stop fighting what's already real, you get your strength back to actually do something about it. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." That doesn't mean we go looking for pain. But when it finds us, as it inevitably will, we can meet it with curiosity instead of bitterness. We can ask, what is life trying to teach me through this? What quality is being tested in me right now? Patience, courage, faith? Here's a small exercise I often give my patients. When something goes wrong, big or small, say this out loud. Good, this is for me. Not because you enjoy the pain, but because you're claiming it as part of your training. Missed a flight? Good, I can practice patience. Got criticized? Good, I can practice humility. Something ended? Good, I can practice starting again. It's one of the simplest Stoic practices, and one of the most transformative. It takes you out of the victim's seat and puts you back in the driver's seat of your response. So what does amor fati look like in real life? It looks like this. You stop waiting for life to be easy before you're grateful. You stop saying, why me? And start saying, why not me? You realize every season, even the dark ones, carries lessons you can learn in the light. You stop needing your story to be perfect, and start making it meaningful. And somewhere along the way, you look back and realize, you've become the kind of person who can face anything. Not because nothing hurts anymore, but because nothing can take away your will to grow. That's amor fati. That's the art of transforming every obstacle into an instrument of evolution. So next time life throws something at you that you never asked for, try whispering 3 quiet words to yourself. Still my path. Because sometimes the hardest, most painful moments are not detours. They are the road. Absolutely. Let's continue. There's a lot of pain out there right now. Open the news, scroll through your feed, listen to a conversation at a cafe. You'll feel it. Anger, exhaustion, outrage, fear. It's easy to start believing that the only way to survive in a harsh world is to harden your heart. But that's not strength. That's corrosion. And the Stoics knew it well. They lived in a world full of injustice, slavery, corruption, war, betrayal. Epictetus was literally born a slave. Marcus Aurelius ruled through plague, war, and political decay. Seneca was forced to take his own life by the very emperor he once advised. Yet, they never let bitterness define them. They believed that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can always control whether you become worse because of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Let that sink in for a second. He's not saying, don't fight back. He's saying, don't become what you hate while fighting it. There's a kind of quiet dignity in that. A strength that doesn't need to shout. I remember a woman I once counseled, a social worker named Denise. She'd spent 20 years working with children in poverty. And she came to me completely burned out. She said, I used to do this because I loved helping people. Now I just feel angry all the time, at the system, at the parents, at everyone. It's like the world's pain has leaked into me. We talked for a long time about compassion fatigue, about boundaries, about how good hearts get tired too. But what finally helped her was a Stoic question I offered gently. Denise, what if your job isn't to fix everything? What if your job is to stay kind while you try? She sat in silence for almost a full minute. Then said, I can do that. That's Stoicism at its most beautiful. Not apathy, but anchored empathy. See, the Stoics didn't tell you to ignore injustice. They told you not to let it infect you. There's a difference. You can face corruption and still act with integrity. You can face cruelty and still act with compassion. You can be disappointed by humanity and still refuse to give up on it. Because if you lose your kindness, you've already lost the fight. Seneca said, every person you meet is an opportunity for kindness. He didn't say, every good person. He said every person. Even the rude ones. The arrogant ones. The ones who don't say thank you. The ones who hurt you. Kindness, in Stoicism, isn't weakness. It's moral discipline. It's refusing to let other people's darkness dim your own light. And that's not just ancient wisdom, it's neuroscience. When we stay in chronic anger or bitterness, our brain gets stuck in what psychologists call threat mode. Our body stays tense. Our cortisol stays high. Our worldview narrows. We stop seeing people, we only see enemies. We stop seeing complexity, we only see sides. We stop seeing life as something to participate in, and start seeing it as something to defend against. Bitterness is just unhealed pain that decided to build armor instead of boundaries. But there's another way. When we act with compassion, even small, quiet acts, we shift our body's chemistry. We move out of threat and into connection. We release oxytocin, serotonin, the chemicals of calm and trust. We start to feel safe again, not because the world changed, but because we did. And that's exactly what Stoicism trains you to do. To find your center even when everything around you spins. Marcus Aurelius once wrote something that hits me every time I read it. The world is change. Life is opinion. He's reminding himself. What happens outside you will always be unstable. What happens inside you, that's your responsibility. So when the world feels cruel, your first duty isn't to fix the world immediately. It's to make sure it doesn't poison your heart. Because once you lose your ability to see people as human, you stop being part of the solution. Let's make this real for a moment. You're driving, someone cuts you off. You can spend the next 10 minutes cursing them. Or you can take one deep breath and say, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. You read a cruel comment online. You can spend the night rehearsing your comeback. Or you can close the app and protect your peace. You see another piece of bad news. You can doom scroll until you're numb. Or you can say, okay, I'll do one kind thing today. For someone within my reach. That's Stoicism in action, small, intentional acts that keep your soul intact. In therapy, I sometimes ask clients this question. Who would you be if the world's pain didn't make you hard, but made you wise? Usually, they go quiet. Then you can see something shift in their face. That flicker of recognition, of remembering who they used to be. Before the exhaustion set in. That's the moment healing begins. When you realize kindness is not naivete. It's resilience with an open heart. You can still stand up for what's right. You can still set boundaries, call out harm, demand justice. But do it without letting hatred rent a room inside you. Because bitterness doesn't change the world. It just changes you. And you deserve better than that. So the next time you feel the world wearing you down, pause. Remember this. You don't have to let the world decide the tone of your spirit. You can still be firm without being cruel. You can still care without collapsing. You can still fight without losing yourself. That's what true Stoic strength looks like. A heart that stays soft. In a world that keeps trying to harden it. Let's keep going. If you forget everything else about Stoicism. But remember this one idea. You'll already feel a huge difference in your mental health. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. Sounds fancy. But the idea is very simple. In life, there are things you can control. And there are things you cannot. Your peace depends on knowing the difference. And living like you genuinely understand it. Let me ask you something. When you're stressed, anxious, or overthinking, what do you usually think about? Is it what you can do or say next? Or what someone else might do or think or decide? Most of the time, our suffering comes from trying to control. The second category. Other people's opinions. Their reactions. Whether they stay or leave. Whether they love us or not. Whether we succeed or fail in their eyes. Whether the world behaves the way we want. The Stoics are very direct about this. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Epictetus. Up to you. Your actions, your choices, your attitudes, your effort, your honesty. Not up to you. The weather, the past, the economy, other people's minds. And ultimately, outcomes. You influence outcomes. You don't own them. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you're about to go into a job interview. Here's what most people obsess over. Will they like me? Will I get the job? Will I sound smart enough? What if they think I'm not qualified? Look at that list. How much of it is truly under your control? You can't climb into their brains and adjust their thoughts. You can't control how many candidates there are. You can't control whether the company freezes hiring at the last minute. But here's what is under your control. How prepared you are. How clear and honest you are about your skills. Whether you show up on time, rested, and present. Whether you treat everyone, from front desk to final interviewer, with respect. Whether you follow up thoughtfully. That's your side of the line. The Stoics would say, own that side completely, and let the rest go. I had a client once, we'll call her Emily. who was exhausted from worrying about what people thought of her. Her favorite sentences were, "I'm scared they'll think I'm not good enough. I'm scared they'll think I'm weird. I'm scared they'll think I'm too much or not enough." When we wrote down her worries, about 80% of them were in the category of what's inside other people's heads. So I drew a line down a sheet of paper. On the left, I wrote, "Under my control." On the right, "Not under my control." We started placing each thought on one side. How they see me, right pointing arrow right side. How I show up, right pointing arrow left side. Whether they like my message, right pointing arrow right. Whether I speak kindly and clearly, right pointing arrow left. After a few minutes, she just stared at the paper and said, "I spend most of my energy on the side I literally can't touch." That's what the dichotomy of control reveals. We're draining ourselves by pouring energy into things we never actually control. No wonder we're tired. Here's the key Stoic shift. From, how do I make things go my way? To, how do I show up well, no matter which way things go? That's control. Not control over life. Control over yourself in life. Let me give you another example. You send a text to your partner. "Hey, can we talk later? There's something on my mind." They don't reply for 2 hours. Immediately, your brain might start. They're mad at me. They're avoiding me. They don't respect me. Here we go again. They never take me seriously. You feel anxiety, anger, fear. But pause. What's the event? You sent a message. They haven't replied yet. Their brain, their mood, their notification settings, their timing. All on the not under my control side. Your brain, your reaction, what you do next. All on the under my control side. You can choose to send 5 more texts, escalating. Stalk them on social media to see if they're active. Rehearse a full argument in your head. Or, you can choose to breathe. Wait. Decide what you'll say when you do talk. Notice your fears without letting them drive your behavior. Same situation. Completely different inner experience. From a therapist's perspective, the dichotomy of control is like a psychological off switch for unnecessary suffering. Anxiety often says, "I must have guarantees before I act or feel safe." Stoicism replies, "You will never have guarantees. But you can have clarity about what's yours to do, and what's never been yours at all. Once you accept that, you stop trying to hold the whole world in your hands. You just hold your side of the line. Your choices, your values, your effort. And that's more than enough work for one lifetime." Let me tell you about another client. We'll call him John. John would lie awake at night for hours, replaying worst-case scenarios. What if the project fails? What if my boss fires me? What if my parents are disappointed? What if I embarrass myself in front of everyone? I asked him, "When you finish worrying for 2 hours straight, what actually changes in reality?" He laughed, but it was a tired laugh. "Nothing. I just feel more drained and less prepared." So we tried a Stoic-style experiment. Each night, when the worries started, he asked himself 2 questions. Is this under my control? Yes, no. Be brutally honest. If yes, what small action can I take tomorrow? If no, how can I adjust my attitude toward it? If it was under his control, he wrote down a concrete next step. If it wasn't, he practiced saying, "This is not mine to control, but it is mine to face with courage when it comes." Little by little, his sleepless nights shrank. Not because life got easier, but because he stopped trying to micromanage things that were never in his job description as a human being. So, how can you actually practice this? Here's a simple tool I'd love you to try today if you can. Brain the 2-column Stoic list. Take a piece of paper or a note app and draw a line down the middle. On the left, right. Within my control. On the right, right. Outside my control. Now, pick one thing that's bothering you right now. It might be a relationship problem, a situation at work, a health scare, a financial worry, something in the news. Start listing elements of that situation and place each on one side. Example. Situation. I might be laid off. Outside my control. Company profits. Market conditions. Final decision of the board. What others think of me. Within my control. How well I do my work today. Updating my resume. Reaching out to my network. Cutting unnecessary expenses. How I treat my colleagues during uncertainty. How I talk to myself about my own value. Then ask yourself, where have I been spending most of my emotional energy? Left side or right side? And then, gently but firmly, choose. Today, I will focus on the left side. The right side I will meet when it comes. But I won't live inside it in advance. That is Stoic mental training. Not abstract, very concrete. The dichotomy of control doesn't make you passive. It doesn't say, just accept everything and never try. It says, act with full effort where you have power. Let go of the illusion of power where you don't. Imagine how much lighter your life would feel if you really lived this way. You still apply, but you don't beg your worth from a promotion. You still love, but you don't chain your sanity to someone else's mood. You still plan, but you don't shatter if the plan changes. You still care, but you don't collapse every time the world doesn't cooperate. That's not indifference. That's mature, grounded engagement with reality. Let me leave you with one more question, very Stoic, very therapeutic. Right now, in this season of your life, what is one thing you need to stop trying to control? And one thing you need to finally start controlling? Maybe you need to stop trying to control how fast someone heals, whether someone apologizes, what strangers think of you. And maybe you need to start controlling how you speak to yourself, how much sleep you give your body, how much time you spend doom scrolling, whether you reach out for help when you're not okay. If you begin there, just there, you're already practicing the heart of Stoicism. You're stepping out of the storm you can't command and learning to command the one place you truly live. Your own mind, your own choices, your own character. And in the Stoic view, that's where real freedom has always been. Let's keep flowing. There's a line from Seneca that hits like a quiet punch. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. We say things like, time flies. Life is so short. Where did the year go? But if we're brutally honest, it's not that life is that short. It's that we keep spending it on things that don't really matter. And then act surprised when it feels like it disappeared. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If I could pull up a screen time report for your life, not just your phone, where do you think your hours are going? How many hours to scrolling, arguing online, replaying old grudges, worrying about things that never happened, saying yes to things you don't care about, and how many hours to your health, your deepest relationships, your growth, your real passions, your rest and recovery? Most people, when they really look, realize something painful. I'm guarding my money and giving away my time for free. Seneca noticed this 2,000 years ago. And somehow, with smartphones and endless content, we've only gotten worse at it. In therapy, I often hear some version of this sentence. I feel like my life is passing by and I'm not really there for it. Not suicidal. Not in crisis. Just absent. Living in a kind of mental autopilot. Wake up, right pointing arrow phone, right pointing arrow work, right pointing arrow more screens, right pointing arrow bed. Repeat. One of my clients, we'll call him Mark, said it perfectly. I'm busy all the time, but if you ask me what I've been living for lately, I don't know what to say. That's not a schedule problem. That's an attention problem, a values problem, a time amnesia problem. And Stoicism goes right at it. The Stoics had this practice called memento mori. Latin for remember you will die. Sounds dark, right? But it wasn't meant to be depressing. It was meant to be clarifying. Because when you really remember that your time is limited, suddenly a lot of nonsense falls away. You become quicker to say, I'm sorry. Quicker to say, I love you. Quicker to say, no, that's not how I want to spend my day. Slower to cling to petty fights, jealousy, and drama. Memento mori isn't about staring at the grave. It's about waking up to the gift of today. One of my clients had a near-fatal car accident. He told me later, on the ambulance, I didn't think about my emails, my deadlines, or my bank account. I thought about the people I love, and all the things I kept postponing. That's memento mori in real time. Life putting a hand on your shoulder and saying, you don't have forever. Are you sure you want to live like you do? The Stoics tried to ask that question before the ambulance moment. Not to scare themselves. To live more deliberately. Let's bring this down to something very simple. Imagine that each day, when you wake up, you're given a small bag with 24 gold coins. Those coins are your hours. You can spend them however you like. You cannot save them. And at midnight, whatever you didn't use well is gone forever. If you really saw each hour as a gold coin, would you spend 3 coins doom-scrolling bad news you can't act on? 2 coins rereading an argument in your head? 1 coin stalking your ex on social media? Or would you be more intentional? Maybe 1 coin moving your body. 2 coins being fully present with your kid or partner. 1 coin calling a parent or old friend. 1 coin learning something that excites you. 30 minutes just sitting in silence, letting your mind breathe. From a psychological point of view, people feel more fulfilled not when they do more, but when they do the right things more often. Stoicism is obsessed with that distinction. Seneca wrote, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Think about it. If someone tried to take $500 from you, you'd say, hey, what are you doing? That's mine. But when something takes 5 hours of your day and gives you nothing back, no meaning, no joy, no growth, how often do you say, hey, what are you doing with my life? We rarely do. We just call it killing time. But here's the truth. When you kill time, you're not killing something abstract. You're carving pieces off your one and only lifetime. Now, I'm not saying you should be a productivity robot. Life is not a spreadsheet. Rest matters. Play matters. Silliness matters. Doing nothing for a while can be deeply healing. The Stoics weren't against pleasure or downtime. They were against wasteful living. Living on autopilot so long that suddenly whole years disappear, and you barely remember being there. The question isn't, is this productive? The question is this worth a piece of my life? Sometimes a goofy movie with a friend is absolutely worth it. Sometimes a nap is worth it. Sometimes a slow walk with no goal is worth it. Sometimes another hour of scrolling is not. You feel the difference. Your body knows it. The work is to start listening. So, how do you practice this stoic awareness of time without getting anxious or morbid? Here's a gentle exercise I often give. Mantelpiece clock the evening look back, 5 minutes. Tonight, before bed, take a quiet moment. No TV, no phone, just you. Ask yourself, where did my time go today? Not in perfect detail, just in broad strokes. Then ask, what felt worth the time I gave it? What didn't? Finally, if tomorrow is similar to today, will I be okay with that repeating 365 times? You're not judging yourself. You're just noticing. Because awareness is where Stoic practice starts. If that feels heavy, remember, this isn't about overhauling your entire life overnight. It's about tiny shifts. 30 minutes less scrolling. 10 minutes more reading or journaling. 1 more honest conversation with someone you love. Saying no 1 time where you would have said yes out of guilt. Those small changes, repeated, are how a life goes from, where did it all go? To, I was there. I was awake. I showed up. Memento mori doesn't ask you to fear death. It asks you to respect today. To remember that the hug you keep postponing might be the last one. The dream you keep delaying won't chase you forever. The version of you that's always too busy is not the only version possible. Time is not just passing. You are trading it. The Stoic question is, are you getting a good return? So let me leave you with this. If this year were your last full year on Earth, not in a panic way, but in a clear-eyed, Stoic way, what would you stop wasting time on? What would you definitely want to make more room for? You don't have to change everything tomorrow. But maybe you can start with 1 hour. 1 hour reclaimed from autopilot. 1 hour invested in something, or someone, that your future self will look back on and say, yes, that was a good way to spend a piece of my life. That's living like a Stoic. Not cold. Not emotionless. Just awake to the fact that this isn't a rehearsal. This is it. And you still have time, right now, to use your time differently. Beautiful. Let's keep the flow going. If you scroll through social media, you'll see a lot of Stoicism these days. Quotes from Marcus Aurelius, photos of statues, minimalist fonts. It looks wise, calm, aesthetic. But here's the truth that often gets lost in translation. Stoicism is not something you read. It's something you practice. It's not about having the right philosophy tattooed on your arm. It's about training your mind the same way athletes train their bodies. Through repetition, reflection, and daily effort. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations to impress anyone. He never meant it for publication. It was his private journal. His way of talking himself through the chaos of leading an empire. Of losing loved ones. Of facing betrayal and fatigue. That's what Stoicism really looks like. Not perfection, but a man alone at night, writing reminders to himself to stay kind, disciplined, and grounded when life pushes hard. Modern psychology would call this cognitive rehearsal. Retraining your mind's default responses through conscious repetition. Because your brain doesn't change when you get it. It changes when you do it, over and over, until it becomes second nature. You can't just understand calm. You have to practice calm when you want to scream. You can't just admire self-control. You have to exercise it when your impulses flare. You can't just, quote, focus on what you can control. You have to actually let go of something outside your control. And feel the discomfort of doing so. That's where growth lives, in the repetition. I once had a client, an executive, very successful, who loved Stoic quotes. He'd tell me things like, Ryan Holiday says, the obstacle is the way. I love that stuff. But he also confessed, I still lose it over small things. Traffic, rude emails, minor delays, I just explode. So I asked, how often do you practice Stoicism? Not just read about it? He paused, then laughed a little. Practice? You mean like, actually stop and apply it? Exactly. You wouldn't read about push-ups and expect muscles to grow. Yet we often treat mental training that way. So how do you practice Stoicism? For real? Let's look at a few of the same tools the Stoics used. And how modern psychology backs them up. Memo 1. Journal every day, like Marcus Aurelius. This doesn't mean writing something profound. It means thinking on paper. Ask yourself, what challenged me today? What emotion took over me today, and why? How could I respond differently tomorrow? You're not performing. You're auditing your mind. That's what Marcus did. That's what Seneca did. That's what we do in therapy sessions every day. Because reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without reflection, it's just repetition. Brain 2. Catch your thoughts in real time. Epictetus taught his students, when you are upset, it's not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. So every time you feel triggered by a comment, by traffic, by a small loss, Pause and ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Then write it down, or just name it in your head. Example. Story. They're ignoring me on purpose. Story. I always mess things up. Story. This means I'm a failure. The act of naming the story creates a tiny gap. And in that gap, choice returns. That's Stoic mindfulness, 2.000 years before we called it CBT. Speech balloon 3. Practice calm in small situations. Don't wait for a crisis to test your philosophy. Start small. If you're standing in a slow line, practice patience. If your coffee spills, practice acceptance. If a rude comment appears online, practice restraint. Every little irritation is a free training session for your inner peace. Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. That means the world is your gym. Every challenge is a representative. Woman in lotus position 4. Schedule stillness. The Stoics valued silence, not as luxury, as discipline. Marcus wrote, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. You don't have to meditate for an hour. Even 2 minutes of deep breathing before checking your phone counts. Even one quiet walk without headphones counts. Stillness is the space where you remember who you are, before the world tells you who to be. Handshake 5. Rehearse virtue. Stoicism isn't just about controlling your emotions. It's about living according to 4 virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Each day, pick one. Ask yourself, what would wisdom look like in this situation? What would courage look like? What would justice or fairness look like? What would temperance, self-restraint, look like? The point isn't to be perfect. It's to keep these words alive in your daily choices, until they start shaping how you naturally respond. There's something fascinating about how this works neurologically. Every time you practice awareness before reaction, pause before impulse, reflection before emotion, you're literally rewiring your brain. You're teaching your nervous system, I don't have to live in automatic mode. Over time, that becomes your new normal. That's neuroplasticity. That's Stoicism meeting neuroscience. So here's the big takeaway. You can't think your way into Stoicism. You have to live your way into it. Start small. Write one line in a journal. Pause before replying to that text. Breathe once before making a decision. Each of those tiny acts is like a single drop of water shaping a rock over time. Slowly, quietly, they carve out a stronger, steadier you. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Meaning, don't tell people you're stoic. Show them. Show them through your calm when others panic. Through your kindness when others judge. Through your humility when others boast. Through your focus when the world distracts itself to death. That's Stoicism alive. Not on a shelf, not in a quote post, but in a human being, breathing through the storm, and still choosing grace. Perfect herb. Let's keep the rhythm steady, calm, reflective, human. Seneca once wrote, every person you meet is an opportunity for kindness. Think about that for a moment. He didn't say every good person. He didn't say every grateful person. He said every person. That's the foundation of Stoic justice. Not courtrooms or political slogans, but how you treat the human being standing right in front of you. Because before justice can exist out there, it has to exist in here. When we hear the word justice, we usually picture systems, laws, rights, protests, politics, fairness at scale. And yes, those things matter deeply. But the Stoics believed that justice begins in something far simpler and far quieter. How we treat each other in the smallest moments. Do you hold the door open? Do you listen when someone speaks? Do you pay attention to the person cleaning your office? Or serving your coffee? Or bagging your groceries? Those micro acts of respect are not trivial. They are the DNA of a just society. In my therapy work, I've seen how people carry invisible weights. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you don't see. Anxiety, grief, loneliness, regret. And yet, we often walk around armored in judgment. We snap, rush, roll our eyes, or tune out. Not because we're bad, but because we're busy, numb, or exhausted. Stoicism invites us to pause and remember. The person in front of you is not an obstacle. They're a mirror, reminding you who you are when you respond. One of my clients, let's call him Aaron, once told me something beautiful. He said, "I used to think being strong meant being in control. Now I think it means being kind when I could be cruel." That's Stoic justice in its purest form. Because cruelty is easy when you're hurt. Kindness takes mastery. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, had power beyond anything we can imagine. Armies, wealth, control over life and death. But in his private writings, he reminded himself every morning. Begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, arrogance, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. But they are like this because they do not know good from evil." And then he would add, "I cannot be harmed by them. For no one can degrade me without my consent." That's not resignation. That's compassion anchored in strength. Let's talk about this from a psychological point of view. Kindness doesn't just help others, it heals you. When you act with kindness, your body releases oxytocin and serotonin, the connection and well-being chemicals. Your heart rate slows. Your nervous system shifts out of fight or flight. It's not mystical, it's biological. Your body recognizes kindness as safety. And over time, that safety accumulates into confidence. Because when you know you can respond with calm and decency, even in chaos, you stop being afraid of the world. You trust yourself. And that is the beginning of real freedom. But kindness doesn't mean weakness. This is important. A Stoic isn't someone who lets the world walk all over them. They set boundaries. They speak truth. They defend what's right. But they do it without losing their humanity. It's the difference between a sword that's sharp and one that's poisoned. Seneca would say, "The wise person does not seek revenge. The wise person seeks understanding." Because revenge might feel powerful for a second, but it keeps the wound open. Understanding closes it. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I worked with a man who had been betrayed by a close friend in business. It cost him money, reputation, and trust. He said, "I'll never forgive him. I want him to hurt like I did." We talked for months. One day, he came in looking calmer. He said, "I realized something. I can spend the next 5 years being angry at him. Or I can spend the next 5 years building something better." He didn't excuse the betrayal. He just decided not to let it dictate who he'd become. That was his act of justice. To choose creation over corrosion. That's what Seneca meant by kindness as strength. A decision to stop the chain of harm with you. In a world that rewards outrage, kindness has become almost rebellious. It doesn't trend, it doesn't go viral, but it changes the temperature of every space it touches. Even one calm person in a room full of noise shifts the entire atmosphere. That's why the Stoics practiced it like a discipline. Not random acts of kindness. Consistent acts of decency. Every day. With strangers. With enemies. With themselves. So, if you want to bring a little Stoic justice into your daily life, try this small challenge. Yellow heart, the invisible kindness, practice. Every day this week. Do one small kind act. But tell no one about it. Pay for someone's coffee. Send an encouraging message. Pick up a piece of trash that isn't yours. Give someone your full attention without rushing them. No post, no credit, no, "Look what I did." Just the quiet joy of doing good. For no reason other than it's good. That's Stoic kindness. It doesn't need applause. Because the act itself is its own reward. Justice starts that small. Before it's a law, it's a habit. Before it's a movement, it's a mindset. When you practice kindness daily, you're not just being nice. You're contributing to the invisible moral architecture of the world. You're saying, no matter how chaotic things get, I'll keep choosing decency. And that choice, multiplied across thousands of small moments, is how a civilization stays human. So remember, the world doesn't need more angry perfectionists. It needs calm, kind realists. People who act from virtue, not vanity. People who don't confuse being loud with being strong. Seneca's words still whisper through time. Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. And maybe that's how justice really begins. Not with a law, but with you. Right here. Right now. Let's keep going. Clapperboard Part 11. Train the body so the mind leads. Up to this point, we've talked a lot about the mind. Thoughts, emotions, values, perspective. But the Stoics were very clear about something that modern psychology and neuroscience now confirm. If you want a strong mind, you can't ignore the body. We like to imagine we're pure willpower. But in real life, it often feels more like this. You decide to get up early, right pointing arrow, your body says 5 more minutes. You decide to stop scrolling, right pointing arrow, your hand keeps swiping. You decide to eat better, right pointing arrow, your body screams for sugar at 10 p.m. Sound familiar? The Stoics understood this tension deeply. That's why Seneca wrote, "We treat the body rigorously so that it may not be disobedient to the mind." Not because they hated the body, but because they knew, if you never train your body to do hard things, your mind becomes its servant, not its leader. Let's get something straight. Your body is not the enemy. It's more like a very strong, very ancient animal, whose first instinct is always seek comfort, avoid discomfort, save energy. From an evolutionary point of view, that makes sense. But in modern life, where you're not running from lions, that same instinct starts to work against you. You end up with comfort over growth, convenience over discipline, numbing over facing what hurts. That's where the Stoic approach comes in. Not self-punishment, but self-training. One of my clients, let's call him Leo, came to me saying, "I feel weak mentally. I bail on everything I say I'll do. Diet, gym, waking up early. I break my own promises all the time." He thought his problem was no motivation. But as we dug deeper, we realized his problem was that his body had been the boss for years. Every time discomfort showed up, he obeyed. A little tired? Skip the workout. A little stressed? Order junk food. A little bored? Open social media. His mind would say, "Let's change." His body would reply, "Not today." And his mind would fold. The Stoics would look at that and say, "Of course you feel mentally weak. You've trained yourself to surrender at the first sign of discomfort. So we didn't start with a crazy workout plan. We started with one very Stoic rule. When your alarm rings, you have 5 seconds to get up. No negotiating." That was it. Not for the rest of his life, just for the next 30 days. The first week, he told me, "I hate you." He was joking, mostly. But then he said something important. I realized it's not waking up that drains me. It's the 15 minutes of arguing with myself in bed. If I just get up, it's over. That's Stoic training in its purest form. Less drama, more doing. He was teaching his body a new rule. Discomfort doesn't mean stop. It means we're doing what we said we'd do. Another classic Stoic practice that's having a comeback today is cold exposure, cold showers, cold plunges. Now, you don't have to do this. But let's talk about why it became a Stoic thing. Picture this. You're standing by the shower. The water is cold. Your brain starts screaming, "Nope, terrible idea, not today, too tired, too stressed, too something." That moment, right there, is the training ground. Because if you say, "Okay, fine, we won't do it," you're teaching your brain, Whenever we feel strong discomfort, we obey it. But if you gently say, I hear you, we're doing it anyway, and you step under the water, you're teaching a different lesson. We can feel intense discomfort and survive. We do not have to obey every signal our body sends. From a neuroscience perspective, you're strengthening the part of your brain that manages impulses and emotional responses. The prefrontal cortex. You're saying, I am not my reactions. I'm the one who decides what to do with them. That's Stoicism in the nervous system. Now, I'm not telling you to torture yourself. Stoicism is not about beating up your body. It's about using the body as a gym for the mind. That might look like pushing yourself through the last 5 reps when your muscles burn. Finishing the final minute of a run even when you want to stop. Doing the dishes when you'd rather leave them for later. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator just because you said you would. These are not fitness tips. These are identity reps. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even when your body complains, you're quietly telling yourself, I can trust me. I keep my own word. That's one of the most powerful forms of mental health. I worked with a woman, we'll call her Maya, coming out of a long depressive episode. Big goals felt impossible, but we started with a tiny Stoic practice. Walk for 10 minutes outside every day, no matter how you feel. Sun, rain, tired, sad, 10 minutes. She didn't have to speed walk. She didn't have to feel motivated. She just had to show up. Weeks later, she told me, it's not that walks cured my depression, but they gave me evidence that even on my worst days, there's still a part of me that can choose. That's what physical practice can do. It gives you proof that your will isn't dead. You don't have to feel like it. You move anyway. And in moving, you remember, there is more to me than my mood. So how can you bring this into your life without turning it into an extreme challenge? Here are a few Stoic-style experiments you can try. Biceps 1. The no snooze rule. For 1 week, when your alarm rings, get up within 5 to 10 seconds. No negotiations. You're not training mornings. You're training decision greater than action. Woman walking 2. The daily, hard thing. Once a day, do one small thing that your body doesn't feel like doing, but your mind knows is good for you. A short workout. A walk in the cold. Cleaning your space. Turning off the screen and going to bed on time. Notice the internal complaints and do it anyway. Gently. Ice 3. Tiny cold exposure. At the end of your warm shower, turn the water cold for 10 to 20 seconds. Breathe through it. You're not trying to be a superhero. You're teaching yourself. Discomfort rises. Discomfort falls. I can ride it. The point of all this isn't to become obsessed with toughness. It's to build a quiet, calm confidence. I know I can handle hard things, because I practice doing little hard things every day. That way, when life throws real adversity at you, illness, loss, change, stress, it doesn't feel like your first time in the ring. You've been training for it. Not by reading motivational posts, but by getting under the metaphorical barbell. Again and again. The Stoics didn't want you to worship your body or ignore it. They wanted you to integrate it, use it, respect it, train it, so that when your values say, go, your body doesn't automatically say, no. Seneca wasn't glorifying pain when he talked about treating the body strictly. He was saying, let your mind be captain. Let your body be the ship. Take care of it, but don't hand it the wheel. So maybe ask yourself, where is my body running the show? Where do I always choose comfort over commitment? What is one small physical habit I can practice? Not to look better on the outside, but to become stronger on the inside? You don't need to change everything at once. Pick one rep to add into your day. Over time, those reps add up to something much bigger. A life where you don't constantly feel pushed around by cravings, laziness, or fear. Instead, you feel this gentle, grounded truth. I am the one who decides. My mind leads. My body follows. And that, in the Stoic world, is one of the greatest empires you can ever rule. Let's roll on. Up to this point, we've talked a lot about the mind. Thoughts, emotions, values, perspective. But the Stoics were very clear about something that modern psychology and neuroscience now confirm. If you want a strong mind, you can't ignore the body. We like to imagine we're pure willpower. But in real life, it often feels more like this. You decide to get up early, right pointing arrow, your body says 5 more minutes. You decide to stop scrolling, right pointing arrow, your hand keeps swiping. You decide to eat better, right pointing arrow, your body screams for sugar at 10 p.m. Sound familiar? The Stoics understood this tension deeply. That's why Seneca wrote, "We treat the body rigorously so that it may not be disobedient to the mind." Not because they hated the body, but because they knew, if you never train your body to do hard things, your mind becomes its servant, not its leader. Let's get something straight. Your body is not the enemy. It's more like a very strong, very ancient animal, whose first instinct is always seek comfort, avoid discomfort, save energy. From an evolutionary point of view, that makes sense. But in modern life, where you're not running from lions, that same instinct starts to work against you. You end up with comfort over growth, convenience over discipline, numbing over facing what hurts. That's where the Stoic approach comes in. Not self-punishment, but self-training. One of my clients, let's call him Leo, came to me saying, "I feel weak mentally. I bail on everything I say I'll do. Diet, gym, waking up early. I break my own promises all the time." He thought his problem was no motivation. But as we dug deeper, we realized his problem was that his body had been the boss for years. Every time discomfort showed up, he obeyed. A little tired? Skip the workout. A little stressed? Order junk food. A little bored? Open social media. His mind would say, "Let's change." His body would reply, "Not today." And his mind would fold. The Stoics would look at that and say, "Of course you feel mentally weak. You've trained yourself to surrender at the first sign of discomfort." So we didn't start with a crazy workout plan. We started with one very Stoic rule. When your alarm rings, you have 5 seconds to get up. No negotiating. That was it. Not for the rest of his life, just for the next 30 days. The first week, he told me, "I hate you." He was joking, mostly. But then he said something important. I realized it's not waking up that drains me. It's the 15 minutes of arguing with myself in bed. If I just get up, it's over. That's Stoic training in its purest form. Less drama. More doing. He was teaching his body a new rule. Discomfort doesn't mean stop. It means we're doing what we said we'd do. Another classic Stoic practice that's having a comeback today is cold exposure, cold showers, cold plunges. Now, you don't have to do this. But let's talk about why it became a Stoic thing. Picture this. You're standing by the shower. The water is cold. Your brain starts screaming, "Nope, terrible idea, not today, too tired, too stressed, too something." That moment, right there, is the training ground. Because if you say, "Okay, fine, we won't do it," you're teaching your brain. Whenever we feel strong discomfort, we obey it. But if you gently say, "I hear you, we're doing it anyway," and you step under the water, you're teaching a different lesson. We can feel intense discomfort and survive. We do not have to obey every signal our body sends. From a neuroscience perspective, you're strengthening the part of your brain that manages impulses and emotional responses. The prefrontal cortex. You're saying, "I am not my reactions. I'm the one who decides what to do with them." That's Stoicism in the nervous system. Now, I'm not telling you to torture yourself. Stoicism is not about beating up your body. It's about using the body as a gym for the mind. That might look like pushing yourself through the last 5 reps when your muscles burn. Finishing the final minute of a run even when you want to stop. Doing the dishes when you'd rather leave them for later. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator just because you said you would. These are not fitness tips. These are identity reps. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even when your body complains, you're quietly telling yourself, I can trust me. I keep my own word. That's one of the most powerful forms of mental health. I worked with a woman, we'll call her Maya, coming out of a long depressive episode. Big goals felt impossible, but we started with a tiny Stoic practice. Walk for 10 minutes outside every day, no matter how you feel. Sun, rain, tired, sad, 10 minutes. She didn't have to speed walk. She didn't have to feel motivated. She just had to show up. Weeks later, she told me, it's not that walks cured my depression, but they gave me evidence that even on my worst days, there's still a part of me that can choose. That's what physical practice can do. It gives you proof that your will isn't dead. You don't have to feel like it. You move anyway. And in moving, you remember, there is more to me than my mood. So how can you bring this into your life without turning it into an extreme challenge? Here are a few Stoic-style experiments you can try. Biceps 1. The no snooze rule. For 1 week, when your alarm rings, get up within 5 to 10 seconds. No negotiations. You're not training mornings. You're training decision greater than action. Woman walking 2. The daily, hard thing. Once a day, do one small thing that your body doesn't feel like doing, but your mind knows is good for you. A short workout. A walk in the cold. Cleaning your space. Turning off the screen and going to bed on time. Notice the internal complaints and do it anyway, gently. Ice 3. Tiny cold exposure. At the end of your warm shower, turn the water cold for 10 to 20 seconds. Breathe through it. You're not trying to be a superhero. You're teaching yourself. Discomfort rises. Discomfort falls. I can ride it. The point of all this isn't to become obsessed with toughness. It's to build a quiet, calm confidence. I know I can handle hard things, because I practice doing little hard things every day. That way, when life throws real adversity at you, illness, loss, change, stress, it doesn't feel like your first time in the ring. You've been training for it. Not by reading motivational posts, but by getting under the metaphorical barbell. Again and again. The Stoics didn't want you to worship your body or ignore it. They wanted you to integrate it, use it, respect it, train it, so that when your values say, go, your body doesn't automatically say, no. Seneca wasn't glorifying pain when he talked about treating the body strictly. He was saying, let your mind be captain. Let your body be the ship. Take care of it, but don't hand it the wheel. So maybe ask yourself, where is my body running the show? Where do I always choose comfort over commitment? What is one small physical habit I can practice? Not to look better on the outside, but to become stronger on the inside? You don't need to change everything at once. Pick one rep to add into your day. Over time, those reps add up to something much bigger. A life where you don't constantly feel pushed around by cravings, laziness, or fear. Instead, you feel this gentle, grounded truth. I am the one who decides. My mind leads. My body follows. And that, in the Stoic world, is one of the greatest empires you can ever rule. Let's roll on. So far, we've talked a lot about how you act, how you respond, what you choose, how you train your body and mind. But there's another training ground that the Stoics paid a lot of attention to. One we usually ignore or misuse. Right finger your imagination. The movie playing in your head all day. Because whether you notice it or not, your mind is constantly running what if scenarios. What if I fail? What if they leave? What if I embarrass myself? What if everything goes wrong? Sound familiar? The Stoics didn't try to shut that movie down. Instead, they said, if you're going to imagine, do it on purpose. And do it in a way that makes you stronger, not weaker. They used two kinds of visualization. Positive visualization, seeing yourself doing well, showing up as your best. Negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, calmly imagining what could go wrong and how you'd respond. Used together, they're like mental weight training. They help you hope wisely and fear intelligently. Keycap 1. Positive visualization. Let yourself see it working. Let me ask you. Before a big moment, an interview, a race, a presentation, a difficult conversation, what's the usual trailer in your head? A disaster movie, or a story where you show up well? For most people, it's the disaster movie. We see ourselves forgetting every word, freezing, being judged, rejected, laughed at. No wonder we feel like we're going to die before we even start. But your brain is very suggestible. When you picture yourself failing over and over, your nervous system reacts as if that failure is already happening. Heart rate goes up. Breathing gets shallow. Thoughts get foggy. Now you're walking into a challenge, with your body already in panic mode. The Stoics and modern sports psychology flip that. They'd say, before you step into the arena outside, step into it in your mind, as your best self. Not perfect. Not magical. Just you, at your best. I once worked with a client, we'll call her Hannah, who was terrified of presenting at work. Before every presentation, her inner movie looked like this. She opens her mouth and nothing comes out. People stare, bored or annoyed. Her boss thinks, wow, she's not leadership material at all. By the time the real presentation arrived, she'd already failed in her imagination 20 times. Her body did what it had rehearsed: freeze, stumble, rush. We didn't start by changing her slides. We started by changing her mental rehearsal. Every night, for a week before her next big presentation, I asked her to spend 5 minutes doing this. Close your eyes. Picture yourself walking into the room. Feel your feet on the floor. Picture yourself breathing calmly before speaking. Hear your own voice, not booming, not TED Talk perfect, just steady. Imagine 1 or 2 people nodding as you talk. See yourself finishing, taking a breath, and sitting down with a sense of, I did my part. That's it. Not a fantasy of standing ovations. Just a clear, grounded run-through of her best realistic self. After a few days, she said, I'm still nervous, but it doesn't feel like I'm walking into total chaos anymore. It feels like I've been there before. And in a sense, she had. Her brain had already practiced. That's positive visualization. You give your nervous system a preview of success, so it doesn't slam the panic button automatically. But here's the key Stoic twist. Positive visualization is not about guaranteeing that things will go your way. The Stoics would never say, just visualize success and the universe will obey. They'd say, visualize yourself acting with excellence, and then accept that the outcome is still not fully in your hands. You see yourself speaking with honesty, playing with focus, competing with courage, showing up with love, and then you let the results be whatever they are. The point is not to control the future. The point is to train yourself to bring your best self into it. Keycap 2. Negative visualization. Facing the what if's calmly. Now here's where Stoicism gets really interesting. In addition to visualizing good performance, the Stoics recommended doing something that sounds uncomfortable. Right finger premeditatio malorum. The premeditation of evils. In modern words, intentional worst-case scenario thinking. Now you might say, wait, I already do worst-case thinking all the time. I'm an expert. But there's a big difference between anxiety's version of worst-case scenarios, chaotic, repetitive, paralyzing. Stoic premeditation, calm, structured, solution-focused. Anxiety asks, what if everything goes wrong? And then repeats that question in 100 variations. without ever answering it. Stoic negative visualization asks, okay, realistically, what could go wrong? And if it did, what would I do? Notice the difference? One is spinning. The other is planning. Let's say you're starting a new business. Anxiety says, what if I fail? What if I lose all my money? What if I look stupid? What if everyone judges me? Stoic premeditation would look like this. What are 3 things that could realistically go wrong? Revenue is slower than expected. A partner backs out. A product launch flops. If revenue is slow, what's my plan B? Reduce expenses. Take on part-time work temporarily. Extend runway by X months. If a partner backs out, what then? Renegotiate scope. Recruit someone new. Scale the project down. If a launch flops, what then? Gather feedback. Iterate. Try a smaller, lower risk offer next time. Now, are those scenarios fun to think about? Absolutely not. But when you look at them directly and say, if this happens, I will do __. Your brain shifts from helplessness to readiness. From a psychological standpoint, this reduces anxiety because the unknown becomes more known. You feel less like a victim of surprise. You've already seen yourself survive it in your mind. The Stoics noticed long ago. The blow that hits us hardest is the one we never prepared for. Premeditatio malorum doesn't stop the blow, but it stops you from being totally shattered by it. Another client of mine, David, managed large projects. He used to lose sleep over every potential problem. So we tried something stoic. Before each project, we'd sit down and ask, what are the top 5 realistic things that could go wrong? For each one, how could I prevent it? And, if it still happens, how do I respond? He'd write them out. Weeks later, he told me, it's not that projects suddenly became easy, but I stopped being shocked by normal problems. My brain had already seen them once. This is exactly what the Stoics were after. Not a charmed life. A prepared mind. Keycap 3, putting them together, a balanced mental gym. If you only do positive visualization, you risk getting fragile. The moment something doesn't match your happy script, you panic. You feel betrayed by reality. This isn't how it was supposed to go. If you only do negative visualization in an anxious way, you risk becoming paralyzed. You're always braced for catastrophe. You rehearse failure so much you forget you're capable of more. The Stoic balance is, see yourself doing well, and also see that even if things go badly, you can respond with courage and creativity. You're not betting your soul on plan A. You're also not living in a cave of what ifs. You're saying, I hope for the best. I prepare for the worst. And I trust myself to adapt to whatever actually comes. That's not magical thinking. That's mental toughness. Let me give you a simple way to practice this. Brain the Stoic visualization drill, 10 to 15 minutes. Pick one event coming up that matters to you. A meeting. A performance. A hard talk. An exam. Step 1, positive visualization, 3 to 5 minutes. Close your eyes and imagine you arriving prepared and on time. Your body feeling grounded, feet stable, breath steady. You speaking or acting clearly and honestly. You handling a small challenge, a tough question, a glitch, with composure. You finishing with a sense of, I did what I could. As well as I could. Don't fantasize about perfection or universal applause. Just see yourself showing up as the person you want to be. Step 2, negative visualization, 5 to 10 minutes. Open your eyes and write down 3 things that could realistically go wrong. Under each one, answer, if this happens, what is one thing I can do to respond? Example, what if I forget what I was going to say? Right pointing arrow, I can pause, take a breath, and say, let me gather my thoughts for a second. Right pointing arrow, I can glance at my notes. Right pointing arrow, I can move on to the next point instead of freezing. What if someone criticizes me? Right pointing arrow, I can say, That's helpful feedback. Thank you. Right pointing arrow, I can ask, can you tell me more about your concern? Right pointing arrow, I can remind myself it's about the work, not my worth. You're teaching your brain. If the bad thing happens, it's not the end. It's just a different script, and I still have lines to say. Do this a few times, and notice what happens to your anxiety curve. It won't flatline, you're human. But it usually drops from crisis to challenge. And that's enough to act with courage. You and I can't control the future. We can't force outcomes, guarantee safety, or block every storm. The Stoics knew that. What we can do is train our minds, so that when the future arrives, with its mix of good and bad, we don't meet it as strangers. We've seen some version of it before. We've already practiced being steady in success, and not shattered by setbacks. That's the quiet power of positive and negative visualization together. You stop using your imagination as a weapon against yourself. You start using it as a tool, sharpening your readiness, your realism, and your resilience. So next time your mind starts whispering, "What if it all goes wrong?" try answering, in a very stoic way, "Then I will face it. And here is how I might begin." And next time you catch yourself assuming everything will be a disaster, try asking, "What if, just this once, I let myself imagine it going well? What if I give my nervous system at least one version of the story, where I show up as my best self?" That's not lying to yourself. It's giving your future a fair chance to be more than just a replay of your fears. And that, in the Stoic sense, is one of the most compassionate things you can do for your own mind. All right, let's switch into English and keep going from here. If you've stayed with me up to this point, you've probably noticed a pattern in Stoicism. It's not obsessed with removing emotions. It's obsessed with reorienting your life. From, I do whatever my feelings tell me in the moment, to, I do my best to act according to my values, even when my feelings disagree. That's a huge shift. And it might be the most important shift of all. The ancient Stoics talked about 4 cardinal virtues. 4 pillars they believed a good life rests on: wisdom, seeing clearly, thinking deeply, choosing well; justice, doing what's fair, decent, and right toward others; courage, doing what's right even when you're scared; temperance, self-control; balance, enoughness. None of those depend on feeling great. You don't need to feel amazing to be wise. You don't need to be in a good mood to be fair. You don't need to be fearless to act courageously. You don't need to be excited to practice self-restraint. Values are like north on your inner compass. Emotions are like weather. They both exist, but only one is meant to guide your long-term direction. From a psychological perspective, this is huge. Many people I work with in therapy don't actually have a mental illness problem. They have a direction problem. They're living like this: if I feel anxious, I'll avoid. If I feel angry, I'll blow up. If I feel sad, I'll shut down. If I feel bored, I'll scroll. In other words, whatever I feel, I follow. That might feel honest in the moment, but long-term, it creates chaos. Jobs started and abandoned. Relationships built and burned. Promises made and broken. Dreams imagined and never pursued. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, people start saying things like, "I feel like I'm living the wrong life. I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't trust myself to make decisions." That's not because they're broken. It's because they've been using mood as a compass instead of values. Let me give you a concrete example. One of my clients, we'll call him Chris, was the kind of person who felt everything very intensely. When he was happy, he was all in, affectionate, generous, enthusiastic. When he was angry or hurt, he was also all in, shouting, blocking people, slamming doors, quitting jobs. He once told me, "I feel like I live on emotional impulse. I act first, think later, regret last." Sound familiar? When we dug into his history, He realized he'd always admired a certain type of man. Not the tough, stoic on the outside, never cry, stereotype. But the kind of man who is honest but respectful, strong but gentle, direct but not cruel. In other words, he admired integrity. So I asked him, if you had to choose 3 words to describe the man you want to become, what would they be? He thought for a long time. Then he said, honest, respectful, steady. We wrote those 3 words down. Then I asked, when you explode in anger at your partner, which of these 3 words are you living out? He looked at the page and said quietly, none of them. That was a hard moment, but a powerful one. Because it showed him something crucial. His problem wasn't that he had feelings. His problem was that he obeyed every feeling, instead of checking it against his values. This is where Stoicism and modern psychology overlap beautifully. In therapies like ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, we talk a lot about values-based living. You clarify what truly matters to you. You accept that your emotions will go up and down. You commit to actions that reflect your values, even when your emotions don't match. That's almost exactly what the Stoics were doing, just with different language. The Stoics weren't trying to become emotionless statues. They were trying to become value-driven humans. They wanted their reactions to be shaped by wisdom over impulse, justice over revenge, courage over avoidance, temperance over excess. Let's take a common situation. You're angry at someone you love. Your feelings might say, they hurt me, I want to hurt them back. I want to say something that will shut them down. I want to walk out and make them feel what I feel. Your values might say, I care about this person. I want to be honest, but I don't want to be cruel. I want to solve the problem, not just win the argument. If you live by feelings alone, you'll probably follow the first script. You'll say the thing that stings. You'll storm out. You'll send a text you can't unsend. If you live by values, you might still feel the same rage, but you'll act differently. You might say, I'm really angry right now. I need a few minutes. I want to talk about this, but I don't want to say something I'll regret. Same feeling, different compass. That's Stoicism. Not, I don't feel, but I'm not letting this feeling decide who I become. Here's another example I see a lot. You hate your job. You feel stuck, drained, unseen. On Monday morning, your feelings scream. Quit, walk out, send the angry email, burn it all down. But your values might say, I want to be responsible. I want to act with integrity. I don't want to make decisions just to escape discomfort. I want to leave well if I leave, not recklessly. Living by values doesn't mean staying in a toxic job forever. But it does mean you ask, if I truly value courage and wisdom, what does leaving well look like? You might make a plan, save money, have honest conversations, look for opportunities that align more with your values. Then when you exit, it's not an emotional explosion. It's a deliberate move. That's the difference between my feelings are the captain and my values are the captain. My feelings are waves I navigate. So how do you actually start living more by values and less by emotional weather? Here's a simple Stoic-inspired exercise you can try. Compass Step 1. Name your core values. Take a quiet moment and ask yourself, if people who really knew me describe the kind of person I want to be in one sentence, what words would I want them to use? Write down 3 to 5 words. They might be honest, kind, brave, fair, patient, curious, loyal, calm, disciplined. Choose the ones that feel most true, not the ones that sound fancy. These are your inner North Star. Compass Step 2. Keep them visible. Write those words somewhere you'll see every day. On your phone background. On a sticky note by your desk. Inside your journal. On your bathroom mirror. The Stoics repeated their principles every day. Because they knew. You can't live by a value you never remember. Compass Step 3. Ask the Stoic question in real time. When you're in a heated moment, angry, hurt, tempted, afraid, try to insert a tiny pause and ask, if I were living by my values right now, what would I do? Not, what feels good right now? Not, what would prove I'm right? But, what action here is most aligned with the kind of person I want to become? You won't answer perfectly every time. Sometimes you'll still snap, still avoid, still procrastinate. But every time you remember to ask, you shift 1% away from impulse and 1% closer to integrity. That 1% repeated over months and years? That's what changes a life. Compass Step 4. Reflect. Don't punish. At the end of the day, instead of asking, was today good or bad? Try asking, where did I act according to my values today? Where did I let my emotions drive me away from them? What might I try differently next time? The Stoics did this all the time. They reviewed their day not to beat themselves up, but to learn. You don't need self-hatred. You need self-honesty. Stoicism is not, I must be perfect. It's, I am responsible for the direction I keep choosing, even when I mess up along the way. If you look at your life right now and feel, I'm lost, I don't know who I am anymore, that's not a permanent identity. That's a sign that feelings and outside pressures have been driving for a long time. The way back is not one dramatic decision. It's dozens of small moments where you quietly choose fairness over pettiness, courage over avoidance, honesty over image, discipline over comfort. Those choices are like bricks, stacked day after day. They build a life that feels more like you. The world we live in is built to pull you away from your values. Algorithms want your attention, not your integrity. Advertisers want your insecurity, not your wisdom. Outrage culture wants your anger, not your fairness. Stoicism gives you a different script. You don't have to become whatever the world pulls you into. You can become who you decided to be. Not once, not in theory, but in thousands of tiny, quiet acts. So maybe tonight, ask yourself, if I stopped letting my feelings be the boss and started letting my values lead, what is one small thing I would change tomorrow? It might be the way you talk to your partner, the way you scroll, the way you show up at work, the way you talk to yourself. Whatever it is, start there. Stoicism isn't asking you to become a saint. It's inviting you to become consistent, so that more and more of your life lines up with the person you quietly, deeply know you want to be. All right, let's keep flowing. There's a tiny Stoic superpower that can change your daily life more than almost anything else we've talked about. It's not glamorous. You won't see it trending. But it's unbelievably powerful. You are not obligated to turn every little thing into a big emotional event. Read that again. You are allowed to let things be small. You are allowed to not take the bait. You are allowed to say, yeah, that was annoying, but it doesn't get my whole day. In modern life, a lot of us are walking around with our emotional volume turned up to 11. Someone cuts us off in traffic, right pointing arrow, unbelievable. People are the worst. A coworker sends a slightly rude email, right pointing arrow, we replay it for hours. A friend doesn't text back fast enough, right pointing arrow, we spiral. Did I do something wrong? A stranger online leaves a snarky comment, right pointing arrow, whole mood ruined. It's like we're skinless. Everything touches a nerve. A client of mine once described it perfectly. I feel like I don't have an emotional filter. Every tiny thing hits me full force. If you feel that way, you're not broken. You're just unprotected. You don't yet have what Stoicism tries to build. A healthy layer of mental skin. Epictetus said something incredibly sharp. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. He didn't say, no one will ever be rude to you. He didn't say, you shouldn't feel hurt. He said, there's a moment where you decide, Whether this becomes a wound or just a passing sting, that moment is tiny. It's the space between what they did, what you make it mean. And that's where your power lives. Let's break that down with a simple example. You text a friend, "Hey, want to grab coffee tomorrow?" They don't reply. Event. They haven't answered your message. That's it. That's the raw fact. Now your mind jumps in with, "I must have annoyed them. They don't respect me. I always care more than people care about me. I'm clearly not that important." None of that is in the text. That's all added by your mind. The Stoic move is not to say, "I don't care, whatever." That's numbness, not wisdom. The Stoic move is to say, "Okay, fact. No reply yet. Story. I'm telling myself it means they don't care. Question. Do I want to turn this into a whole emotional drama? Or let it stay what it is until I actually know more?" You don't suppress the sting. You just don't feed it until it becomes a monster. From a psychological perspective, this habit of inflating everything comes from a few places. Old wounds. If you grew up feeling ignored or criticized, your brain is primed to see disrespect everywhere. Anxiety. Your mind constantly scans for danger, including emotional danger. Ego. Not, "I love myself too much," but actually, "I'm so insecure I interpret everything as about me." The Stoics understood this, even without our modern vocabulary. That's why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You always have the power to have no opinion about a thing, and not let it trouble your soul." Notice that. No opinion. He doesn't mean, be ignorant. He means, when something trivial happens, you can say, "I see it. I don't need to build a whole narrative around it." You can choose not to amplify it. I once worked with a guy, let's call him Kevin, who was exhausted from being offended all the time. He told me, "I feel like I'm on emotional high alert 24/7. If someone uses the wrong tone, if they forget to say thank you, if they cut me off mid-sentence, I ignite." It wasn't just tiring for him. It was burning his relationships. So we tried a very simple Stoic experiment. For 1 week, he had a rule. Every day, I will consciously let one thing go that I normally would make into a big deal. Not stuff like abuse or serious disrespect. We're talking small frictions. Someone walking slow in front of him. A barista getting his order slightly wrong. A friend texting back with just, "K." Every time it happened, he paused and asked, "Is this really worth my peace? Or can this be one of the things I let pass today?" At first, he said it felt fake. He wanted to react. But after a few days, he noticed something. "I'm still getting annoyed. But the feeling comes and goes faster. It doesn't own the whole day anymore." That's exactly the Stoic goal. Not no emotion. Just less emotional colonization. Here's a crucial distinction. Stoicism does not ask you to minimize real harm. If someone is abusive, right-pointing arrow, you set hard boundaries. Maybe leave. If something unjust is happening, right-pointing arrow, you speak up. Take action. If a relationship is chronically toxic, right-pointing arrow, you don't just let it go. That's not Stoicism. That's self-abandonment. The Stoic practice we're talking about here applies to minor slights, awkward interactions, rude strangers, off days, clumsy comments, the friction of everyday life. For those, you have a choice. I can turn this into a full-length drama. Or I can treat it like a trailer I don't like and skip it. So how do you start shrinking things back to their real size? Here are a few practical, Stoic-inspired tools. Fire extinguisher 1. Use the scale of 1 to 10 inches. When something upsets you, ask, on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being life-changing crisis, where does this really fall? Someone rolling their eyes at you, right-pointing arrow, maybe a 2. A stranger being rude in traffic, right-pointing arrow, 1 or 2. A friend forgetting to like your post, right-pointing arrow, honestly, 0.5. Just this question alone helps your brain recalibrate. Not everything can be a 9. Fire extinguisher 2. Name it. This is a small thing. When your emotions flare, bring in a gentle thought. This is uncomfortable, but it's a small thing. Not to dismiss your feelings, but to right-size them. You'd be amazed how much it helps to remind your nervous system. We are not in a life or death situation. We are dealing with an inconvenience, annoyance, awkward moment. Your body will often follow your mind's lead. Fire extinguisher 3. Choose your battles intentionally. At the start of the day, you can even decide, today, I will consciously ignore at least 3 small things that I could get upset about. Make it a sort of inner challenge. Then when someone cuts in line, someone sends a curt message, someone misunderstands you, you can think, okay, here's one of my 3. I'm not giving this my whole nervous system. You're training selective reactivity. Fire extinguisher 4. Ask the Stoic question. Who do I want to be in this moment? Do I want to be the person who explodes at the waiter? Who honks for 30 seconds because of one bad lane change? Who rants about a misunderstanding for a week? Or do I want to be the person who notices the irritation, breathes, and lets 70% of things go by without giving them my whole soul? That doesn't mean swallowing everything in silence. It means being strategic with your emotional energy. Here's the hard truth. If you treat every inconvenience like a catastrophe, you will have no reserves left for the real catastrophes. Life will bring you serious storms, illness, loss, major failures, big crossroads. You will need emotional strength for those. Stoicism wants to protect that strength by not blowing it all on small stuff. As Marcus Aurelius might say today, save your fire for the real battles. So maybe ask yourself, how many hours of my life have I lost replaying something trivial? How often do I let other people's clumsiness live rent-free in my head? What would my days feel like if I let just 30% more things slide? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's worth practicing. Because every time you choose not to escalate, not to turn a grain of sand into a mountain, you're doing something quietly radical. You're taking back ownership of your inner world. You're saying, you can be rude, you can be careless, you can be thoughtless if you want, but you don't get to decide who I become today. That's Stoicism. Not ice cold, just unconquered. And if you start small, one less argument, one less offended reaction, one less emotional replay, over time, you'll notice something changing. The world will still be messy. People will still be imperfect. But inside, there's more room, more calm, more clarity, more energy left for what truly matters. In our final part, part 15, the obstacle is the way. We'll bring everything together and talk about how Stoicism invites you to see adversity itself, not just as something to endure, but as the very path through which you become the strongest, wisest version of yourself. If you'd like, we can dive into that next. All right, let's land this plane together. If you've stayed with me until now, you already know Stoicism isn't about feeling nothing, or pretending life is easy, or forcing yourself to be positive no matter what. At its core, Stoicism is about this. Life will always give you obstacles. You get to choose what they mean. And perhaps no Stoic idea is more famous or more misunderstood than this line inspired by Marcus Aurelius. The obstacle is the way. It sounds cool on a t-shirt. But what does it actually mean? When you're in the middle of something that hurts, let's unpack it slowly, like two people talking late at night. After life has gotten very real. Pain is real. Stoicism never denies that. Before we talk philosophy, let's acknowledge something simple and human. Some things that happen to you are genuinely awful. Losing someone you love, getting sick, watching a marriage fall apart, failing at something you've given years to. being betrayed by someone you trusted, getting fired out of nowhere. You don't need a quote when you're in that. You need air. You need a soft place to fall. You need time to just survive. A lot of people think Stoicism jumps in at that point and says, see everything as a lesson. Be grateful. Smile through the pain. No. That's not Stoicism. That's toxic positivity in a fake mustache. Real Stoicism is closer to, yes, this is brutal. Yes, this hurts like hell. Yes, you're allowed to cry, shake, collapse, feel lost. And also, when you are ready, we will look for a way to turn this from just harm into harm that grows you. The obstacle is the way does not mean the obstacle is fun or the obstacle is good. It means, since you cannot avoid obstacles, you might as well use them. From why me to what now? In therapy, one of the most sacred spaces I sit in is that moment after someone's life has just exploded. A divorce they didn't want. A diagnosis they didn't expect. A business closing. A child struggling. And almost always, at some point, they say a version of, why is this happening to me? It's such an honest question. I would never throw Stoic quotes at that moment. Why me? Is a human cry. It deserves to be heard. But here's the hard truth. For many of life's blows, there is no satisfying answer to that question. You can look for reasons, patterns, lessons, but there will always be a gap. That's where Stoicism gently invites a different question. Not, why me? But, what now? Not in the first second. Not while you're still bleeding. But eventually, when you can breathe again. The question shifts from, why did this happen? To, given that this has happened, what can I do with it? That's the moment the obstacle starts turning into a path. A real story. When life erases the plan. Let me tell you about a client. We'll call him Mark. Mark had a clean plan for his life. Solid career, stable income, growing leadership role. He wasn't trying to be a billionaire. He just wanted steady. Then, his company reorganized. New leadership, new politics, new structure. Within a few months, the role he'd built his identity around was gone. He sat in my office and said, I don't know who I am without this job. I've done everything right. Why am I the one being cut? For a while, we didn't do mindset work. We did basic emotional first aid. Grief, anger, humiliation, fear about money and family. He needed to feel it before he could reframe it. Only after a while did I ask him a Stoic-flavored question. If we assume for a moment that we may never get a satisfying answer to, why me? What would, what now, sound like? He hated that question at first. But as weeks went by, he started to see things he couldn't see in the shock. He'd been overworking for years, sacrificing his health for a job that would replace him in a quarter. He'd ignored a quiet desire to try a different field, because it's too risky. His relationship with his family had shrunk down to weekend dad. None of that made getting laid off good. It still sucked. But slowly, it stopped being only a wound. It became a kind of brutal teacher. He said one day, I would never choose this. But now that it's happened, I don't want it to be for nothing. That sentence is pure Stoicism. I didn't choose the obstacle. But I will choose what I do with it. Over the next year, he shifted industries, set clearer boundaries around time, started actually taking care of his body, and rebuilt a more present relationship with his kids. He didn't walk around saying, thank you, layoff, that was awesome. But he could look back and say, that was the worst break. And also the turning point. That's, the obstacle is the way, in real life. Not inspirational posters. Just a human being refusing to let a bad event define him. As only a victim, what does the obstacle train in you? A very useful Stoic question in hard times is, if this is a training ground, what exactly am I being trained in? Because obstacles don't all teach the same thing. A long illness might train patience, humility, and self-compassion. A breakup might train self-respect, boundaries, and vulnerability. A business failure might train resilience, creativity, and realistic planning. A betrayal might train discernment, cautious trust, and forgiveness over time. When you ask that question, you're not saying, "I'm glad this happened." You're saying, "Since I can't unhappen it, I refuse to walk out of this empty-handed." That mindset alone can keep you from sinking into pure bitterness. Important. This is not blaming the victim. I need to say this very clearly. As a psychologist, Stoicism should never be used to tell someone in pain, "This is your fault for not seeing it as growth." Abuse, trauma, systemic injustice. Those are not cute little obstacles for character building. They are wrong. They deserve outrage. They often require boundaries, legal action, long-term healing. The obstacle is the way should only ever be used by you, on your own experiences, when you are ready, as a way to reclaim agency, not as a weapon to shame others into growing faster. The Stoic move is, what was done to me was not okay. It hurt. It changed me. And I will not let it be the only author of who I become. That's power. Quiet, dignified power. When you're in the middle of it. Let's get practical. Right now, you might be in the middle of your own obstacle. A huge disappointment. A financial mess. A painful relationship shift. A health scare. A sense that your life isn't where you thought it would be. What does "the obstacle is the way" look like from the inside? Not just as an idea? Here's a simple Stoic-inspired process you can try. Name the reality. Write down, as honestly as you can, what happened, how it's affecting you, what you've lost. No sugarcoating. No, other people have it worse, even if that's true. Stoicism starts with facing reality, not denying it. Name what you can and cannot control. Come back to the dichotomy of control from earlier parts. Ask, in this situation, what is absolutely not in my hands? Maybe the past, someone else's choices, the diagnosis, the layoff, the fact that the relationship ended. Then ask, given all that, what is still, even in a tiny way, in my hands? Maybe how I talk to myself about this. Whether I ask for help. How I treat my body while I'm stressed. Whether I reach out or isolate. Whether I use this as proof I'm doomed. Or as evidence I'm in a hard chapter, not a finished book. That little slice of control is your doorway. That's where the way starts. Ask the training question. Gently ask, if this season is training me in something, what might it be? Don't force an answer. Just see what arises. Maybe I'm being forced to learn patience. I'm being forced to set boundaries I've always avoided. I'm being forced to see I'm more dependent on others' approval than I thought. I'm being forced to simplify and see what actually matters. You don't have to be grateful yet. Just curious. Choose one small, concrete step. Not a life overhaul. Just one action that says, even inside this obstacle, I am still capable of movement. It might be booking a doctor or therapy appointment, updating your resume, having one honest conversation you've been avoiding, going for a walk, cleaning your room, writing in a journal for 10 minutes. Small steps matter because they rebuild the most important belief. I am not 100% powerless. And that belief is often what keeps people from sliding into despair. Allow time. Don't rush the meaning. Very important. You don't have to see the gift in this right now. Sometimes we only understand what an obstacle did for us years after it wrecked us. Stoicism doesn't demand you say, "Thank you, pain, you're so beautiful." It simply invites you not to say, "This pain is meaningless and I am ruined forever." It offers a middle path. I don't like this. I didn't choose this. I don't yet see the full picture. But I'm willing to believe that future me might look back and see that I grew here in ways I can't see yet. And in the meantime, you keep moving, step by step, day by day, doing the next right thing you can see, seeing your whole life differently. When you adopt the obstacle as the way, as a lens, your relationship with life changes. You stop expecting the road to be smooth. You stop treating every difficulty as a sign that something is wrong with me, or the universe is against me. You start seeing a delay as a chance to practice patience, a conflict as a chance to practice communication and boundaries, a loss as a chance, eventually, to deepen your compassion for others who suffer, a failure as a chance to update your strategy, your humility, your perseverance. And over time, something shifts inside. You don't become invincible, but you become unbreakable in a different sense. You may bend, you may cry, you may doubt, but you don't stay down in the same way. Because a part of you is always asking, okay, this, too. How can I use even this? That question is the heart of Stoicism. Ringing it all together. We've walked through a lot together. Emotions not as enemies, but as signals you don't have to obey. The true empire being mastery of self, not status. Asking, is this essential to protect your time and energy? Stoicism and CBT working together to calm and rewire your mind. Amor fati, not loving pain, but refusing to let it be pointless. Guarding your inner world from the constant noise and injustice of the outer one. The dichotomy of control, what's yours, what isn't. Seeing time as your most precious resource. Turning Stoic ideas into daily habits, not just quotes. Living from values instead of moods. Learning not to make every scratch a mortal wound. And now, seeing obstacles as possible paths, not just prison walls. You don't have to master all of this. No one does. Not even the Stoics themselves. They struggled. They doubted. They failed. They wrote because they were training, not because they were perfect. You're not here to become a stone, or a robot, or a spiritual superhero. You're here, as far as Stoicism is concerned, to become a little clearer in your thinking, a little steadier in your emotions, a little kinder in your actions, a little braver in your choices, a little less at the mercy of every storm. And every obstacle, big or small, is another representative in that gym. So maybe I'll leave you with this. As if we're cutting to the end of the video and I'm looking straight into the camera. Think of one obstacle in your life right now. Something real. Something that hurts or frustrates you. And ask yourself, gently, if I had to let this be a part of my path, not a detour, not a glitch, what kind of person could I become? By walking through it with as much wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control as I can? You don't have to know the full answer. You just have to be willing to walk. That willingness, that decision to show up, again and again, even when the road is rough. That's where Stoicism stops being a philosophy you admire, and starts being a strength you carry. And in that sense, whatever you're facing right now, the obstacle isn't just in your way. It is the way to the next version of you.